The intensity of the avoidance withdrawal is often directly proportional to the depth of their feelings. This inverted expression of attachment creates profound confusion for anyone trying to understand their behavior through the lens of secure attachment. In healthy relationships, love brings people closer. But for the avoidant, love triggers the opposite response. The more they care, the more they retreat. The deeper the attachment, the greater the distance. This is not paradox for the sake of being difficult. It is the predictable outcome of a nervous system that has learned to associate love with danger, vulnerability with inevitable pain, and emotional dependency with loss of self. Understanding this pattern means recognizing that the avoidant who seems most indifferent may actually be the one feeling the most. Love activates their deepest fear. When the avoidant falls in love, their attachment system does not respond with the warmth and security that characterizes healthy bonding. Instead, it responds with alarm. Every increase in emotional intimacy is interpreted as increased vulnerability. Every deepening of attachment is perceived as greater potential for devastating loss. The more they love you, the more power you have to hurt them. And this power feels unbearable to someone whose core wound tells them that people they love will eventually abandon them. So they create distance as a preemptive defense by becoming cold and withdrawn precisely when they feel the most. They are attempting to protect themselves from the pain they believe is inevitable. The distance is not proof that they do not care. It is proof that they care so much it terrifies them. They would rather push you away themselves than risk you leaving once you see how deeply they need you. The panic of losing control over their emotions. Avoidants pride themselves on emotional self-regulation and independence. Their identity is built on not needing anyone, on being able to walk away from any situation without devastation. But falling in love destroys this carefully constructed self-image. When they are truly in love, they think about you constantly. They feel genuine longing when you are absent. They experience emotions they cannot suppress or rationalize away. This loss of control is psychologically destabilizing. The avoidant who is most in love is the one whose internal experience is most chaotic, most overwhelming, most at odds with their sense of self. The distance they create is an attempt to regain control over emotions that feel unmanageable. By being cold externally, they are trying to cool down the intensity they feel internally. The more distant they become, the more likely it is that they are struggling with feelings too powerful for their nervous system to handle. They are protecting you from their inevitable failure. The avoidant who loves deeply often becomes distant because they believe they will eventually disappoint you. They recognize that they are incapable of providing the consistent emotional availability that genuine partnership requires. They know their patterns will hurt you. They understand that their fear will cause them to sabotage what matters most. Rather than watch you slowly become disillusioned as they fail to meet your needs, they create distance now to spare you the inevitable pain later. This is not noble self-sacrifice. It is fear-driven avoidance that robs both people of the opportunity to build something real. But in the avoidant's mind, the distance is protection. They love you enough to recognize you deserve better than what they can offer, but they are too afraid to do the work that would allow them to become that better version. So they stay distant, convinced that loving you means letting you go before they destroy you through their limitations. Distance is how they test if love is real. For the avoidant, love has always been conditional and temporary in their formative experiences. They learn that care comes with strings, that affection disappears when they show need, that people who claim to love them will eventually leave. When they fall in love as adults, they unconsciously test whether this love will follow the same pattern. The distance they create is a test of whether you will stay despite their worst behavior, whether you love them enough to tolerate their unavailability, whether the connection is strong enough to survive their withdrawal. The most in love avoidants create the most distance because they need the most reassurance that this love is different from every love that hurt them before. They are pushing you away to see if you will fight to stay, even though this test is unfair and often destroys the very connection they are trying to validate. The distance is not rejection. It is a desperate, dysfunctional attempt to confirm that they are lovable even at their most defended. The grief of loving what they cannot keep. The avoidant who is most distant is often grieving in real time. They love you deeply and simultaneously believe that this love is unsustainable. They can see the future where their patterns destroy the relationship. They can predict the moment when you will reach your limit and leave. This anticipatory grief is unbearable, so they grieve preemptively by creating distance that mimics the loss they believe is inevitable. The coldness is not indifference. It is the emotional preparation for an ending they think they cannot prevent. They are trying to hurt less later by hurting more now, detaching gradually to avoid the devastation of sudden loss. The most distant avoidants are the ones most in love because they are already mourning a relationship that is still alive, unable to enjoy the present because they are too consumed with protecting themselves from the future pain they believe is guaranteed. Why this pattern is tragic. The avoidant who loves most and distances most is living in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Their fear of loss causes them to create the very abandonment they are trying to avoid. By being distant to protect themselves from pain, they guarantee the pain by pushing away someone who could have stayed. The love is real. The feelings are genuine, but the expression is so inverted, so counterintuitive, so destructive that it destroys what it is trying to protect. The most distant avoidants are usually the most in love, but that love rarely survives the distance it creates, and they are left with the devastating recognition that they lost someone they genuinely loved, not because that person did not care enough to stay, but because they themselves were too afraid to let them close enough to build something that could last.